Oh, come on up. Dr. Choi? Right there. I tell you what, since I have a somewhat of a captive audience right now, let me do this. Many of you have heard about the ongoing crisis in Jackson, Mississippi, and residents there without safe drinking water or water to flush toilets in their homes, schools, and businesses due to a catastrophic failure of that city's water system earlier this week, flooding, and torrential rains. The mayor of Jackson has close ties to the city of Houston Mayor Chokwe Antoine Lambamba, who graduated from Texas Southern University's Thurgood Marshall School of Law. And as a fellow mayor and as a friend of this particular mayor, we want to help him as a city. So tomorrow we are hosting a water donation drive starting at 7 a.m. To noon, Herman Square, which is right in front of Houston City Hall, 500 McKinney Street, between Smith and Bagby. So this is a call to ask those who can to donate all sizes of bottled water to assist the people in Jackson, Mississippi. I think Houston is familiar with flooding and the devastation that flooding can cause, but let's do our best to pay it forward by helping the people in Jackson, Mississippi. So if you can, if you will help us in doing that, and we didn't want to wait until next week. They need it now, so the sooner we can get to them the better. Okay. Good morning to everyone. Today I'm joined by Beth Murfish, there's Beth, Chair of the Women's Commission, Executive Houston Police Chief, Chief Matt Slinkert, Chief Medical Officer Dr. David Purse, Dr. Laura Choi of the Healthcare Subcommittee, Chair of the Houston Women's Commission, council members, Abby Kamen, who's over Public Safety and Homeland Security for the City of Houston, and Councilwoman Sally Alcorn, who's at large. We also have Dr. White, who is present with us as well. We are here for a very important reason. Last week, the trigger law of Senate Bill 8 went into effect, which essentially criminalizes those who assist a woman in getting an abortion. And we are here today to send a message that we stand with women in our city and we stand with healthcare providers. The conversation around women's reproductive rights has left many in our city, in our state, and our nation very confused and very concerned. Far-reaching, unprecedented, invasive legislation to president-destroying decisions by the Supreme Court, many in our community are fearful of the real-world consequences we now face. And let me say, I too am concerned about the effects, both intended and unintended, that this change in law is having. However, I'm here today with leaders in our law enforcement and medical community to make sure that Houstonians know that as their mayor, a woman's health and safety matters to me, and the livelihood and services of our healthcare providers also very much matter. It matters to HPD, it matters to our healthcare workers. Let me briefly set the stage of how we arrived at this place. In 2021, the Texas legislature passed Senate Bill 8, which created civil bounties to virtually ban all abortions, medical counseling support related to abortion after 6 weeks. As most parents know, 6 weeks is before many even know that they are even pregnant. This law sent a chilling message to women and, by the unique construction of civil law, the medical community. Fast forward to 2022, the ruling of Dobbs versus Jackson's Women Health has overturned the federally protected rights that served as a guarantee for over 50 years. The decision to overturn Roe versus Wade has activated a previously passed trigger ban passed by the Texas legislature. So we are dealing with a complete abortion ban in Texas that is now taking effect with criminal implications. As mayor, I have conferred with the Houston Police Department and recently wrote to District Attorney Kim Ogg outlining the City of Houston's priorities. First and foremost, the City of Houston will not prioritize utilizing resources to create any record used against those experiencing miscarriages, seeking abortion, or any other pregnancy outcome. I'll go into that further detail in the letter, but let me just say to Houstonians that seeking emergency care, know that your care is our first and foremost priority. Secondly, investigations of allegations, charges, or information on pregnancy outcomes will be the lowest priority for the Houston Police Department. That's not to say they won't be investigated, but we have very serious priorities that we even talked about yesterday at City Council that we need to address as relates to violent crime, assaults, rapes, domestic abuse. Those are the things that are critically important, and that's where our resources need to be directed. We will continue to provide the expanded services for domestic abuse and sexual assault. And HPD is here to give assurance that we will continue to go after rapists and abusers, but when it comes to a woman seeking health care and any implication of criminal nature to that is simply not our top priority. Third, to members of the medical community, let me say that the care, the research, and the emergency services that you have provided for the Houston community are both vital and valued. There should be no confusion that HPD is not here to interfere with how you provide medical care to your patients, whether it is for fertility clinics or prenatal services. You have been and will be part of our community. Executive Chief Slinkard is here and will speak more on the Houston Police Department priorities. Finally, I will continue to meet with members of the Mayor's Women's Commission, members and their chair, Beth Murphy. Their concerns and counsel are vital in understanding the real-world implications that can affect how the city offers services. To say the consequences of this sudden change in law was not well thought out is an understatement. Those of us in local government are left having to manage a city with so many questions and with limited resources. And it is important that we identify what those priorities are. I hope the answers provided by the leaders here today can give a degree of certainty in how we intend to operate in this city. As long as I am your mayor, we will respect the complicated, personal, and deeply private decisions that Houston families and women have to make almost every single day. And we will make sure that our services continue to be care that you can trust. And we want health care providers to know that we want them to provide the very best care to every single person within our city without fear that they will be criminalized. As we will continue to direct our limited resources to aid and support the brave men and women who are fighting violent crime in our city, we want to continue to drive those numbers down, and we need to make sure that our limited resources are expended in that effort. We're already seeing a decrease in violent crime based on our One Safe Houston initiative, and we will not be distracted by the politics of any place else. We will instead remain focused on the priorities of this city, and the least of them is regulating a woman's reproductive rights. Having said that, let me now yield to Beth Murphy, Chair of the Houston Women's Commission.
As chair of the City of Houston Women's Commission, I want to extend our gratitude to Mayor Turner, whose remarkable statements today are consistent with his long history of being a champion of women's rights and healthcare access. Mayor Turner, you are saving the lives of Houstonians with these reassurances, and we are so very thankful to you. Houston is home to the largest medical center in the world. We are a city of medicine, and we believe strongly in the right of all people to access effective, safe, compassionate medical care. This statement should reassure physicians in Houston that the correct course of treatment for patients who have experienced miscarriage, abortion, or self-managed abortion is the one determined by the patient and her doctor. Mayor Turner's decisive statements, strongly supported by the Women's Commission, mean that no physician who is treating patients ethically and effectively should fear predatory investigation and frivolous litigation. To our medical community, we are deeply appreciative of the work that you do each day to keep Houstonians healthy and safe, and we support you as you continue to provide care. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. Now let me call on Chief Matt Slinkard, Executive Chief of the City of Houston, HPD.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everyone. So as the Mayor stated, we at the Houston Police Department have been laser focused for the last several years, actually, on driving down what the entire country experienced during the pandemic and post-pandemic, which was an increase in rise in violent crime in almost every major city in America. And as evident in our comments to City Council yesterday, we are seeing a measured difference at this point in the violent crime increases that we had been experiencing over the last couple years. To add some detail to that, we shared with council yesterday that in basically every council district in the city, crime is going down compared to last year. We know that we still have inroads to make to get to a level that was pre-pandemic. We understand that. But we at the Houston Police Department, under Chief Fenner's direction and the mayor's priorities, have been laser focused on those crimes that are affecting Houstonians in the streets every single day, whether it be gun violence, narcotics, gang activity, etc., and the things that the mayor mentioned. And we shared yesterday that overall 5.4% reduction in overall crime in the city. And then we shared that in violent crime categories, an overall 10% reduction based on year-to-date compared to last year. Those are measured successes after issuing in the One Safe Houston plan and a lot of the holistic initiatives that the mayor has had us focus on. And a lot of those initiatives have also included our response and increased robust response to domestic abuse, to violence, to domestic violence, and those efforts will continue. So as the mayor so aptly stated, nobody in the Houston Police Department would ever ignore a law. We are duty bound to do that, and we will investigate accordingly when we are asked to do regarding any law, state, local, or federal. However, we have priorities in place with limited resources, as every major city police department does, and we are going to stay, based on the mayor's priority, laser focused on those crimes that are impacting citizens every single day with, as I said, the limited resources that we have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Chief Slinkard. And I want to amplify another point there that Chief Slinkard just made. In fact, I think it was Councilmember Sally Alcorn yesterday that asked for the historical perspective. Violent crime is down 10%, overall crime 5.4%. In every city council district, it's down. But the question is, from a historical perspective, that's in 22. Comparing to 21, but what about to 2020? And the goal is to drive those numbers down pre-pandemic levels, to go back to 2019, not just comparing them to 21 or to 2020, but to get them all the way down back to pre-pandemic levels. In order to do that, we have to concentrate our limited resources in order to achieve those objectives. And we can't get distracted or we'll lose focus and the situation will not get better. So that's the point that we want to make here, is that's where our emphasis needs to be made. And I believe that's where most Houstonians want us to be focusing the resources that we have. Now let me call on Dr. David Purse, the Chief Medical Officer for the entire city of Houston.
Thank you, Mayor. The City of Houston's Health Department plays a role in this situation in that we offer planning services and reproductive care to men and women all across the city in every neighborhood. Our clinical staff know that family planning is important to our clients. We recognize that an unplanned pregnancy not only impacts the life of that woman, but also everyone in her circle, everyone in her world. So there are many options for both men and women to explore when it comes to family planning, and we are proud to facilitate that sort of education to anyone, regardless of gender identity, race, ethnicity, religion, citizen status, income, their ability to pay. We are available throughout the entire city. Our reproductive health services at our health centers include comprehensive counseling and education, specific contraceptive services, well women exams with breast and cervical cancer screening, sexually transmitted infection and HIV prevention, education, counseling, testing, and some treatment, and referrals for treatment that's beyond our scope. We recognize that our 4 major health centers are predominantly in the disadvantaged areas of the city. However, we know that there are people who live elsewhere in the city that could also take benefit of these services, and we invite you to come to our health services or our health centers for these services that are available to you. And with that, Mayor, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Purse. Now let me call on Dr. Laura Choi, Healthcare Subcommittee Chair of the Houston Women's Commission. Dr. Choi.
Thank you, Mayor, and law enforcement, and Beth Murfish, our chair, as well as my fellow members on the subcommittee, Angie Weiss-Halbert, Rogin Calvert, and Dr. Cody Weiner, for your leadership at this extraordinary time. I want to speak directly to the city of Houston, and this means, in particular, all individuals of childbearing age who have the potential to become pregnant today or tomorrow. I've had the privilege to speak to a lot of you in the last several months, as well as your physicians who have been extraordinarily candid with sharing their experiences since SB 8. I've spoken to community healthcare workers and many other healthcare workers and just residents of our city, our state, and our country. And I can tell you that we are concerned about your health. We are thinking about your health. You may feel that you have been forgotten, but we are thinking about you. And I want to tell you that during this time, this crisis, we have an opportunity for us to refocus on your health. And there are a great number of resources available to you, such as Dr. Skinner mentioned. But if you have, due to the pandemic or your other responsibilities, failed to see a physician in the last couple of years, every person of childbearing age, we ask you to avail yourself of the many resources from our federally qualified health centers, our community clinics, Houston Public Health, Harris Health, to make sure that you don't have a chronic disease which is currently undertreated. If we treat that now before you become pregnant, your pregnancy will be safer. If you should find yourself pregnant and you want to keep that pregnancy, please make sure that you see a physician or healthcare provider within your first trimester. This also will protect your pregnancy and hopefully impact some of our statistics on maternal mortality, which embarrass our state. Finally, there is no law which prevents you as a pregnant person from seeking information on safe and legal abortion. There is no law for you that prevents you or criminalizes you in any way for seeking care for treatment of a miscarriage, an ectopic pregnancy, a complication of an abortion which you obtained elsewhere, or self-managed abortion. We believe that you may have fear, and I believe that the words of the mayor today should reassure you and all of my fellow healthcare practitioners that our responsibility and our privilege to care for you without concern of investigation, interrogation, persecution, or prosecution is as sacred as when we took our oath. So thank you, Mayor, for your words and your leadership.
Thank you, Dr. Choi. And we do want our healthcare practitioners, providers, to do their jobs, without the fear that someone is just going to come and put them in handcuffs. We simply want them to do their jobs. We want them to provide the best care to every single woman in this city. That's what we want, okay? And I want HPD to do its job in helping to drive down violent crime in our city, and I want the community to help them to do their job in driving it down because they can't do it alone. Now let me bring up Councilmember Abby Cameron.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, first I want to thank you for always and unequivocally standing with women and their families in our city. Thank you. And to HPD and law enforcement for continuing to do and step up every single day on the front lines as we address violent crime and safety in our city. I wanted to briefly read a statement that the majority of women serving on city council issued when the Dobbs decision came out and we knew that SB 8 and the trigger law would go into effect. As a majority of women serving on Houston City Council, we find it absolutely necessary to publicly and unequivocally affirm our belief in the dignity and reproductive freedoms women in our city deserve. It is imperative that elected officials stand with women across the country and speak out to ensure the fundamental principles of equality ring loudly from the halls of our city all the way to Congress. And Mayor, with your reassurances today and your focus on health and safety, you are doing just that. As the largest city in the country with the most restrictive prohibitions that has usurped the right to bodily autonomy and privacy for women, the state has put families and law enforcement in an impossible position. Law enforcement does not need to track the menstrual cycles of Houston's women. Law enforcement should not be investigating healthcare providers that are providing support and life-saving services for survivors of domestic abuse or rape. Law enforcement should be investigating and will continue to investigate the abusers. And I also want to recognize the Women's Commission, the participants who have been engaged throughout this process under Chair Murphish, and also representatives from Houston Area Women's Center who are here today that are on the front lines combating domestic abuse. The state needs to stop diverting resources from what the focus should be on, which is the most violent offenses that pose a threat to our community. Today and every day, we stand with women and their families here in Houston. And we are home to some of the most advanced medical care in the world. With the reinsurances we have today, thanks to Mayor Turner and his leadership, I hope hospitals will feel more comfortable and safe in providing women with timely and compassionate and safe care no matter what. Currently, the delays in services are harming women and their families.
Thank you so very much. I want to thank all of these speakers. I want to thank all of these persons who are standing here. Certainly want to thank members of City Council, Councilmember Sally Alcorn, Councilmember Eamon Kamen. And look, we've just heard some horrible stories across the country, the situation that women have been put in, and the horrible situation that healthcare providers have been put in. We can't change Senate Bill 8. And the Dobbs decision is what the Dobbs decision is. But we certainly can create the priorities or set the priorities on how our limited resources will be used. And that's essentially what we're doing today. Having said that, if you have any questions, this would be a good time to ask to any of us.
My question was for law enforcement. Have y'all actually received any kinds of complaints or anything that there is to investigate since this was overturned?
Not to my knowledge, not since this has gone into effect. Of course, I'd have to go back and verify, but no, not to my knowledge. We haven't received any particular complaint or something that would result in an investigation, not to this point, no.
Got it. And I also wanted to ask somebody with the medical community if y'all had any sort of specific examples on the impact of just basically what y'all have seen over the past several months.
I'm not a women's health specialist. I'm a vascular surgeon, but I've been privy to some candid conversations with leaders in maternal fetal medicine at some of the greatest health institutions in our country, which are located right here in Houston. The effects of SB 8, which changed the exceptions from impending fetal demise to only prioritizing abortion only in the case when the mother's life is endangered. means that some hospitals are concerned that to perform a therapeutic abortion when fetal demise is certain but has not yet occurred, that pregnant people are being forced to carry pregnancy for longer than previously. And this has certainly physiological effects on the health of the mother. It has, we can all imagine, as anyone can imagine, profound psychological and mental effects, forcing someone to carry a pregnancy that the family almost certainly wanted. Beyond that time, I think we've all probably read stories in the news of some cases of premature rupture of membranes, which was going to lead to fetal demise, and forcing that person to carry the pregnancy for longer. So in these cases, the confusion has led to the incredibly unnatural insertion of legal counsel into a decision which should be very, very personal, extremely private, that takes place between a very well-trained, compassionate, and committed medical professional and the patient. There are other far-reaching, unexpected consequences, such as that particular patient will occupy more time in the healthcare system than is necessary. The delays that Councilwoman Clayman spoke of cause that person to occupy a bed in the hospital, occupy resources, and therefore people who are far outside of this conflict and conversation may find their care in our hospital systems affected. Women who are experiencing healthy pregnancies, who have planned elective deliveries, may find their care delayed as well. So at a time where our medical professionals have really faced a tremendous amount of stress, when our resources are incredibly strapped, we have a tremendous shortage of nurses who are so valued. We're putting them through an extra strain. And when I hear my fellow physicians state that they are being asked to practice, they are being asked to consider a practice lower than the standard of care, it's really a most tragic circumstances in our city, a great city of medicine with perhaps the greatest medical center here. To see those things happen as a result of a law, certainly I think unintended.
And Arturo, before I would be remiss for you to add to this conversation if you want to.
I think everything has already been said.
Okay. Yes.
Mayor, one of the things you mentioned was, the health and safety of medical providers themselves is also a priority. Are there any plans to increase security at reproductive health clinics, or are there any other priorities along those lines?
It will depend on what we are getting. If, for example, if there are certain threats that are posed against any of our healthcare providers, their clinics, their locations, the answer is yes. I mean, we're going to treat them just like any threats against, for example, a faith-based institution. We will provide the necessary security for them. So yes, the answer to that directly would be yes to that. And I think, Chief Slinky, you want to amplify?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your question. So outside of this particular issue, we look at threats all the time with regard to multiple issues that might be going on in our city or in our nation, and then we adjust our resources as necessary to respond to those potential threats so that we have the greatest possible impact of keeping the public safe and keeping things peaceful, and that's where law enforcement stands. Law enforcement stands in the middle to make sure that everyone can exercise their rights and that we keep the peace even during difficult or stressful situations or stressful times. And so when a new law goes into effect or anything might change, maybe this law, anything else, obviously we're going to be on heightened alert to look for additional threats, and then we will adjust accordingly to make sure that we respond appropriately to put our best foot forward to make sure that everybody's safe.
And then Chief Stunker, I was just looking for a couple more details about the enforcement strategy, because I know you guys are saying it's the lowest priority, but you're also saying that you're duty-bound to obviously enforce the law. And so is that to say that, this will be exclusively complaint-driven, or, what does it look like practically speaking in terms of that enforcement?
Well, practically speaking, as far as protocol, I don't know that anybody can yet answer that for you and answer that for you with any specificity of how an investigation or a case would move forward under this state law. I will reiterate, as the mayor has said, we're not ignoring the law. And as law enforcement officers, we've sworn an oath to uphold the law, all laws. So obviously, though, there are many steps as part of an investigation or any investigation that would ensue. And the last step, at least here in Harris County, Texas, is the fact that an investigation is one thing. But then there's an entire presentation to the Harris County District Attorney's Office, and then there is ultimately a decision by the prosecutorial authority on whether or not the elements of a particular offense are met so that there would even be a criminal case. And so all of those things would have to happen. Today, as we sit here right now, we don't have that particular example, right, to be able to unpack or go over with specificity. But again, I'll go back to the issue that the mayor raised, which was as law enforcement, we support the mayor and council and the citizens of Houston to make sure that we enforce all laws. We will continue to do that as we're duty bound. But obviously, there are priorities when you have limited resources. And right now, we are still focused on driving down those numbers that I mentioned, 10% overall reduction throughout the city in violent crime and a 5.4% reduction in crime, all crimes, including property. And so right now, our officers are doing a fantastic job under difficult circumstances, and we want to keep that moving in the right direction. Thanks.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, have you considered any possible backlash that can come from the state or the Attorney General's office by taking this policy position?
No. I mean, the reality is that we are doing what's in the best interest of this city. We're doing what's in the best interest of the women in this city. We're doing what's in the best interest of healthcare providers and practitioners in the city. And there's never a wrong time to do the right thing. So the answer is no. I think those persons should consider the backlash of a bad Senate Bill 8 and a law that that has undone a 50-year precedent in this city. But I want women to get the best health care that we can offer in this city. And I don't want doctors or healthcare providers or practitioners to second guess themselves in providing the best health care. So no, we're going to do the right thing. There's never a wrong time to do the right thing, and then damn the consequences. All right. Let me just say we're going to focus on driving those numbers down for violent crime. We're going to do everything we can, child, to address domestic abuse and domestic violence and rape that occur within our city. We're going to do everything we can to deal with assaults. And we're going to do everything we can for people who are breaking into our restaurants and businesses. We're going to do everything we can to drive those numbers down. We cannot undo the law. It is on the books. It is what it is. We cannot supersede it, but we certainly can prioritize how resources will be used in this city. I want HPD to do its job, okay? But it's one thing if you break a window, and it's another thing if you go out there and assault a person. Okay, and we marshal our resources where the greatest need is. But I want to be very clear as the mayor. I strongly support a woman's right and reproductive rights. I always have, and I always will. And as long as I am the mayor of this city, I want women and others to know, get the best health care for you, do what's right for you, and this city will be supportive of you and the healthcare practitioners. Now that's very clear. All right, having said that, thank you all so very much. Thank you all. Thank you, every speaker here. Thank you.